Good morning, it's the TMI Queen. It's time for Weigh-In Wednesday, which is why you're getting an extreme close-up because I'm bare naked and I'm ready to start weighing in. Are you? Let's see how I did. Here we go. $198.4. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. All right, so that's 3.4 pounds lost since last Wednesday. And I thought for sure it was gonna be a bad weigh-in today because it was Cinco de Mayo and I had a taco salad. It was really good, but taco salads tend to be a little bit salty because of the seasoned meat that I put in it. And even though it was 25% less sodium in the taco seasoning, it still has some sodium. I am really, really happy with my results. So today I did not have the best breakfast, but hear me out. I finished off the Lucky Charms. There are no more Lucky Charms in this house. It's gone. For lunch, I had frozen pizza. But I only had 2 small squares, which normally I would have like 4 or 5 large squares. So I feel pretty good about that. I mowed 3/4 of my front yard. Now, if you know anything from previous videos, I bought a mower that is not powered by a motor. It is fully powered by me. And let me tell you, it's a workout. And I have done most of my front yard. I've got one more section to go. I have to take frequent breaks because of my back. We've had a lot of rain, so the grass grew fast. So I was tagged today by FrekiFitWolf in a family tag. So I don't know how interested you are in my family or anything about my family, but here goes. Oh, and by the way, I'm at the coloring my hair blue phase of quarantine, which in this light and the way that the camera picks it up, it looks almost gray or kind of green, but I assure you it is navy blue. And I will be tagging Mary Fran at No Excuses, MTB and Weight Loss, and also I think I'm gonna tag Let's Get Fit with Sandy. The first question is, how big is your immediate family? My immediate family is not very big at all. It's just my parents, me, my sister, and then our kids. So yeah. Do you have any siblings? Yes, I have one sister who is about 6 years younger than me. Fun story about her. Her name is Angie, but it was supposed to be Becky. And apparently, I really wanted to be friends with this girl from school, and her name was Angela Kay. And I said to her, you know, that's really crazy because my new baby sister's name is Angela Kay. And she's like, really? Cool. And I thought, they have the same name. She's going to want to be my best friend. Well, she did not ever become my best friend or even anything beyond an acquaintance, but you know, I tried. My teacher came out to the car when my dad was picking me up from school and said, oh, how's little Angela Kay doing? And my dad's like, who? And she goes, you know, Amy's new baby sister. And he's like, oh yeah, her. Oh yeah, she's doing great. So my dad went and told my mom, and my mom's like, well, I guess that's what we'll name her. So sorry, Ange. Share a childhood memory. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, we lived on a farm growing up. My dad was a farmer, my grandpa was a farmer. Well, my dad wasn't really a farmer so much as he helped my grandpa on his farm. But they did like corn and soybeans and stuff like that, grains. But I have memories of me and my sister riding our bikes. There was a trail that led from the road, and it went behind my grandparents' house. My grandparents lived next door to me. but there was a trail that went behind their house, and then it split off into two sections. One over by the barn that went to the back of the field, way far back, like probably a good mile. And then there was another trail that went up to the other part of the field, and that one was more cut out. And me and my sister would pretend that we were school bus drivers, and we would ride our bikes, and we would stop at the corn silos and my grandpa's wood shop and the barn and pretend that they were our stops for school to pick up the school kids to take to school. We had really vivid imaginations because we had 3 channels. My parents did not have cable, and still to this day do not have cable. I don't know how they live, but you know. We lived a very sheltered life. I read a lot because there was literally nothing else to do. My dad was into very traditional gender roles, so farming was not in the cards for any of us. He basically just figured that farming died out with him and never taught us how to ride tractors or drive tractors. Because it just was not acceptable for girls to farm. So it did die out with us. My son probably would have been happy to do something like that, but my sister married a farmer, so the tradition is carrying on with my nephew, so it's all good. One favorite family recipe. Well, I'm gonna share 2, and the reason why is because the one recipe was one that my mom did, and the other recipe is one that I kind of created as a traditional recipe. But my mom always had this recipe where it was egg noodles with, and then she would brown up ground beef and chop up onions in it, and then take mushroom gravy and put it over the top, and then sprinkle peas in it. And it was so stinking good. I still to this day love it when my mom makes it. I tried making it and it did not turn out the same, not even remotely the same. And I did it exactly the way she told me to, but it did not turn out the same way. But the tradition that I started was I always liked to make slow cooked ribs. I would take the country style ribs and put them in an oven for like at 350, I think, for like 6 or 7 hours, and put tons of honey barbecue sauce over the top and cook it all day long until the meat was falling off the bone, like it falls apart in your mouth. It's so good. And then we make mashed potatoes, and sometimes I would take red skin potatoes and make them just like I would mashed potatoes with the skins on, and I would add garlic cloves to it, and it would make these amazing garlic mashed potatoes. But if your body isn't used to eating fresh garlic at any point, it will kill your guts. So if you make it yourself like that, just be forewarned. First time my parents had it, my mom called me and she's like, we're about peeling the paint off the walls because the smell of our doo-doo is so intense. I'm like, sorry, I probably should have told you that ahead of time. My favorite family tradition, I mean, there were things that we used to do. We don't really do really traditional things anymore. It kind of died out after my grandma died. My mom didn't carry on a lot of the traditions. I mean, we still have our Easter and Christmas get-togethers, and occasionally we have like a 4th of July get-together, like a cookout or whatever, but it's not like it used to be. After our grandparents died off, it kind of died with them. It's something that I'm kind of hoping to revive when I get moved back to my old house, but we'll see. But my favorite tradition that we used to do was every year my grandma had a pool party for the 4th of July. And we would literally spend the entire day in the pool. No sunscreen. I would be so incredibly sunburnt because I would spend from probably 10 a.m. until the sun went down at 9, 10 o'clock at night in the pool. And, you know, I'd take little breaks only because my mom forced me to, and it was usually just to get out and eat. And then she'd be like, okay, now that your stomach's settled, you can go back and swim. And I mean, how I don't have skin cancer right now is beyond me because, yeah, I would get burnt to such a crisp. I wouldn't even be able to bend at my elbows or my knees, but I would be so dark. And I apologize to my sister who is melanin deprived. My sister got the Irish genes of the family. I did not. I get really super tan to the point where people thought I was adopted. I'll show you a picture. Yeah, my sister got the Irish genes. Pale skin, light colored eyes, freckles everywhere. Me, I got the dark hair, dark eyes, dark skin. So, and I always like to tease her about how ghost-like she is, but you know, that's what sisters do. Does my family have a motto, spoken or unspoken? The spoken one is, if you're going to talk about somebody, do it behind their back. And don't let them find out you're talking about them. Deny, deny, deny. Used to kind of be a running joke about that. But no, we had like a sort of an unspoken, I don't know if it was a motto so much as just like a thing that we did, but you never say you're sorry. And I know that's a bad thing to tell somebody, to not say you're sorry. You should always say you're sorry. But in our family, it was just understood that you were sorry. Like, we would be mad at each other for like a day, and then the next day we would move on as if nothing had happened. It was like, okay, it's understood that we were sorry for what we said or what we did, and we'd all move on with our lives. And when I got married, it was very hard for my husband at the time to understand that I don't apologize for anything. It was like, mostly because I wasn't sorry for anything I said or did, but I had moved on, but he hadn't, because he was still waiting for an apology. And that was something that I had to learn not only while I was married, but in future relationships, because they expected me to say I was sorry. And I was like, but I'm not going to say that. Like, why would I do that? That's crazy. Something that I did with my parent that I still enjoy doing today. I mean, with my mom, I remember us sitting on opposite ends of the couch and reading. We didn't really do a whole lot. My dad was always gone. Like, he went to work at like 5 a.m. and didn't come home usually until like 5 p.m. And then he would either be outside working on a project or farming or doing some kind of home maintenance. And then on the weekends, if he had any free time, he was fishing. So I really didn't do anything with my dad so much. But other than that, I didn't really do like things with my family. It sounds kind of bad, but I do remember reading with my mom and not reading books with her. She would read books to me until I was old enough to read for myself. But I was a very advanced reader. I started reading before I even started school, and I was reading at a college level by the time I was 10 years old. So I had blown through the entire children's section of the library by the time I was like 6 or 7, and I ran through the young adult section by the time I was 9. And so then I started reading in the adult section, unbeknownst to my teacher. I went to private religious school, and we would go to the public library. And she had told us, you don't go over to the section with paperback books, because that was the romance novels. And but she didn't tell us we couldn't go to the adult section in the back, which is where I was going. And so I was reading books that were far beyond what my mind could comprehend, and I ended up learning a lot about life that I was never intended to know. But yeah, I remember asking my mom what a certain curse word meant, and she was like, where did you hear that word? And I'm like, I read it somewhere. And she's like, where? I'm like, in this book. And she's like, you put that book down right now. I'm like, well, I won't ever say it. I just need to know what it means. And she's like, I'm not telling you. And I'm like, well, if you don't tell me what it means, I'm going to go say it on the school bus, or I'll go say it at school. And I was like, oh, you better not. So she would tell me. But most times she'd just be like, look it up in the dictionary. But the one dictionary we had was for kids, so it didn't have really bad words in it. So I learned some really bad words early on in life. Something unique about my family or family history. There's a couple things. My great-grandma lived to be 100 years old, and she had stories, like lots of stories. My favorite that she told was about how she got engaged. She told me that my great-grandpa, and I never met my great-grandpa. He passed away back when my grandpa was still relatively young. So I never did get to meet him, but she told me that he had gone to the next door neighbor's house and asked for this lady's hand in marriage. And she said, no, I don't think so. And so my grandpa, undeterred, walked next door, took the ring out that he had bought for the other girl and goes, hey, you want to marry me? She said, okay. And I was like, Grandma? And she goes, we didn't marry for love back then. We married for convenience. And he was, a pretty decent farmer and made good money. So I figured, why the hell not? I was like, oh my God. No less romantic than the story about how my mom and dad got engaged. I'll tell you this one too. My mom and dad had been dating for several months, and they were at a department store, and my mom was looking in the jewelry department, and she's like, well, this is a real pretty ring. And she goes, that would be a nice engagement ring. And my dad's like, oh, you want it? And she goes, yeah. And he's like, okay. So he bought it for her. Didn't ever ask her to get married. He just bought her the ring and gave it to her. I was like, Dad, that's so unromantic. He's like, well, she married me, didn't she? I'm like, I mean, I guess, but jeez. You expect this amazing love story and you get, hey, I guess if you want to get married. But they've been married for like almost 50 years, getting close to 50 years. So it turned out, so. But I think something fun and unique, my great, there's 5 greats, I think, grandpa, he worked under Queen Victoria, helping to build the Panama Canal. And his son ended up coming over to America and moved in with his cousins and assumed their last name. So technically my last name is not what it actually is. It technically is something else. I'm not going to share what that is, but I thought that was kind of an interesting piece of history. But he assumed his cousin's last name and ended up becoming quite a prominent farmer in the area. And so much so, they actually named a road after him, the one that I will be living by and that I grew up by, because all that land was parceled out to my family. And I mean, some family ended up taking it on, but eventually some of it's not with family anymore. But my parents still live on family land. My grandma's house, which I will be moving back into, is on family land. But he actually contributed to the Farmer's Almanac, which still goes on today, but he was one of the first contributors to the Farmer's Almanac. So that's kind of a fun fact. He also used to be a woodworker and cabinet maker, and he made caskets as well. And it's funny because the tradition was carried down from generation to generation because my grandpa was an amazing woodworker. He made some amazing pieces of furniture that were very detailed and scrolled and stuff. And even though my dad doesn't have quite the same ability in that respect, he's really good at building things. My mom and dad's house and my grandma and grandpa's house were built by them. And my son is really handy in that respect as well, even though I never taught him anything. But again, because my dad was really big into traditional gender roles, I did not learn that stuff. But conceptually, I'm really good at putting things together. I'm like, I will give my son suggestions on how he should put something together, and he usually does and does a really good job. So I'm a ideas person. I'm like, here's what I'd like to see, and here's what I think you should do, and he'll be like, yeah, and he'll put his little tweaks on it based on his knowledge. But or same with my dad. If my dad's feeling like really ambitious and wants to build me something, I'm like, hey Dad, can you make blah blah blah? Here's what I'm thinking, and then he can put something together. So I mean, that's kind of cool. Kind of wish I would have had that skill though, because eventually I'm gonna have this house and I don't know how to fix anything in it. So I'm gonna have to learn real quick, or I'm gonna have to, you know, try to convince my son to come help me, and you know how that goes. So, and then another fun fact is my cousin is a costume designer for some really prominent Netflix shows, so that's kind of cool. She does shows for Netflix, HBO, what else? The CW. There's a couple shows out there that she does costume design for. So that's kind of cool. I think I got my baking skills though from my mom's other side of the family, the paternal side. My grandpa and grandma, or great grandma and grandpa, owned a bakery in Chicago, which still exists today under the same name, but it's owned by a really nice Mexican family who used to work for them and decided to keep the name, to keep the tradition. But yeah, they used to own a bakery, and I do have mad baking skills. So yeah, if you can't tell, I already pre-recorded that tag video yesterday because I don't have any makeup on now, and I'm not about to put any on at this point in the day. But yeah, so I had a good weigh-in. I hope you enjoyed the little question and answer. I had fun answering it because I love talking about different crazy stories from my family. But anyhow, I hope you guys have a wonderful week, a wonderful weigh-in, and I will talk to you later. Bye.